The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 970, coming to you on Monday the 20th of April 2020. On this program, I continue with the topic on the virus. So this program is called the COVID Pestilence Pt3. But before beginning with the topic, short preliminaries. As usual, my condolences go out to all families which have suffered recent bereavements. And in that connection, I want to mention two families. Firstly, the family of the late Mr. Cedric Mills. I have known Mr. Mills for around 60 years, 60. Yes, I grew up in French's in the early days of my grammar school career, and we were all boys together. And I played with the Mills brothers, Cedric and Bernard and Olaf, knew their sister and their old man, the original Mills of Eveready Funeral Home fame. Last saw him, coincidentally, we met up at the doctor's. That's the last place I saw and chatted with Cedric. My condolences to the entire Mills family. And then it was with great sadness that I received the news of the death of a personal friend of mine, Mr. Cornelius dos Santos of Park Hill. He started off as being a client, but we soon became close friends. We had similar medical histories. And Brother Cornelius and myself got along extremely well. Last saw him about 3 weeks ago when we had a Skype hearing from my office of litigation in which I represented him. My deepest condolences go out to the family, particularly his sister, Isula Sherman, and his niece, Sister Zinzia Sherman. It just so makes me doubly sad that I cannot attend the funeral because I have stopped, on doctor's advice, of going to gatherings, like funerals and other such gatherings on account of the virus and on account of my own advanced age. As everybody knows, I'll be 75 this year if I live to see July, and on account of my underlying health issues. So I've been strongly advised to stay away from crowds of any kind. It saddens me to hear of the death of persons whose funerals I would normally attend, but one has to be sensible and one has to be obedient. Now for the topic of the evening, the COVID-19 Pestilence Pt3. That virus has turned the world upside down. As of last count, official figures put the number of countries and the territories affected as over 200, practically all places on the face of the earth. And those places which in February and in March were rejoicing that they had no COVID-19 virus, in the month of April they have started showing cases of the virus. Because I have been forced to spend so much time at home these days, I make it my business to listen to a lot of the international newscasts on television. I'm what they call a news freak. I love to follow the news. And the day doesn't pass that I don't listen to a complete 1-hour newscast from Al Jazeera. I listen frequently to CNN, MSNBC, and some other stations in between. And from what I have gathered, listening to all the leading medical experts from all corners of the globe, this is a baffling virus, a very contagious one, and the one that is deadly. And the scientists are now saying that even though one gets the virus and recovers from it, they're saying the science does not really know as yet what long-term damage the virus would have done to other organs of our system. There are some reports from some countries that it leaves patients with heart problems, brain problems, kidney problems, and whatnot. So that even though the actual rate of death might appear to be small, yet the virus has not been studied long enough for science to determine what are the long-term effects on somebody who has even recovered from it. But what I find most dangerous and disturbing about the COVID-19 virus are the reports verified by all countries that a person who has the virus may not necessarily be aware that he or she has the virus and is capable of spreading it to other persons, even in that state of being unaware that you are infected. So apparently healthy persons are mixing and mingling with others, not knowing that the apparently healthy ones have the virus, and are capable of passing it on to other persons who then would get the virus and pass it on to others even before one of them has discovered symptoms of the virus that would cause that person to cry for medical help. So that this, unlike all the viruses which are known to man and known to science, this one is highly unpredictable and it does not discriminate. I remember being shocked when I heard that the British Prime Minister had come down with the virus, apparently was recovering at his official residence in 10 Downing Street. Then next thing you know, he was admitted to the hospital, apparently doing well. Then next thing you heard, he was taken to the intensive care unit. And when he recovered sufficiently to be discharged, he said that there was a period when it could have gone either way for him, meaning that he could have died. And he credited mainly his recovery to the fact that there were two nurses, incidentally both foreigners to Britain, one from Portugal and one from New Zealand, one of whom was at his bedside every second of the period that he spent in the intensive care unit. And the British Prime Minister was very grateful for the care and attention he had got from the National Health Service of the UK generally, but from these two nurses in particular. Now, not many patients would have the good fortune to have a nurse monitor them every second of their hospitalization in an intensive care unit, but the British Prime Minister was exposed to the very best of medical care. Other persons in high authority in other parts of the world have come down with the virus. Some have died. The virus is no respecter of persons, but it seems that one thing that the virus loves is gatherings of people. Apparently, it thrives when people are gathered together, so that it doesn't matter if the gathering is a funeral or a fete. Once it's a gathering, the virus is happy to mingle and mix with those who are gathered together. It doesn't matter if the gathering consists of persons who are praying or persons who are partying. Once it's a gathering, the virus appears to love that. Which is why the technique has been promulgated all over the world that one way to slow down the spread of the virus is for people to stay at home, and if they have to go out, to keep what is called a social distance, generally regarded as at least 6 feet from one another. And I heard someone on television a few days ago say that it is better to be 6 feet apart than 6 feet on the ground. But what is intriguing is that in spite of the knowledge that we should avoid being in crowds and in crowded situations, there are people in several states in the United States of America who are demonstrating that they are fed up being at home, fed up of being away from work, and they want the freedom to assemble freely. And you can see them by the roadside with their placards. What they are really asking for is the freedom to infect other persons. And you wonder if these people are crazy. But that's what they regard as freedom. So my brothers and sisters, I want to urge you, even though things are relatively quiet in St. Vincent and Grenadines so far as it is known, let us not feel that we are free to assemble and mix and mingle in crowds. I heard a couple death announcements recently on NBC Radio 705. In spite of the fact that the authorities have said, look, gatherings should not be more than 25 persons, even if they are church gatherings, all right? So the authorities are saying, even if you have a funeral, keep it small, just the family members, and avoid large crowds. I am hearing death announcements where transportation is provided by such and such a van from such and such a place, as if those persons have never heard that there is a strong prohibition against assembling in large numbers. One of our leading churches in Kingston, I think it was Friday or Saturday, had a funeral of apparently over 60 persons, in spite of the fact that churches are advised to limit the numbers. I have had to make the painful decision myself that until the situation changes, I will follow the medical advice and avoid weddings, funerals, even church services, not because I'm inherently coward, but because I believe I am sensible. But there are people who go about the place as if they have never heard of these guidelines. Now, I agree with the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in not declaring a state of emergency, as they have done in some other Caribbean territories. And people who don't know what a state of emergency is had better not wish that one was imposed. Because a state of emergency basically means that your constitutional rights are suspended. And the police have the authority to impose and maintain law and order during a state of emergency. Of course, the time may well come when that might be inevitable in many Caribbean countries. But for the time being, I do not think it is justifiable in St. Vincent and Grenadines to declare a state of emergency. But the authorities have tried the next best thing. They have issued advisories through the Ministry of Health and made suggestions. I want to remind my brethren of the Spiritual Baptist Archdiocese of a release issued by our leader, His Eminence the Most Reverend Melford Pompey, on or about the 6th of April. I will just quote you some items that he promulgated in that release. He said, when meeting, members should maintain physical distance. 2, where congregations exceed 25 members, the leader should make arrangements to divide the congregation to accommodate 2 services. And some churches, non-spiritual Baptist churches, have adhered to that. 3, arrangements for sanitizing before and after church activities should be put in place. 4, For churches where circumstances will not allow for services during this time, leaders are free to make their own decision in the best interest of their members. 5. Whilst the shaking of hands is not allowed, it should not be replaced by any other physical contact. Instead, a verbal greeting or a wave of hand is encouraged. Now, we spiritual Baptists, we like to greet with a brotherly hug, but that is a no-no nowadays. Number 6. Those persons who are elderly or infirm and are affected by medical challenges such as diabetes, high blood pressure, asthma, and other ailments are strongly advised to avoid congregating at any time until further notice. This is the advice coming from our leader, our Archbishop, the Most Reverend Melford Pompey. Wise advice. By all reckoning. Some people say, oh, well, it's church, so nothing will happen to you if you go to God's church in your numbers. Well, with due respect to the view that the Lord protects his own, the Lord has also advised us to be as wise as serpents. When you hear a hurricane is coming, and if that hurricane passes through a particular island, it takes off the roofs of all buildings of all kinds. It doesn't leave church buildings with their roofs intact and take off other roofs. So get sensible, please. And speaking of hurricanes, the civil authorities in this country, as in the rest of the Caribbean, will have a difficult time during the hurricane season if we should get any strong hurricane. Because on the one hand, the COVID pestilence has told us not to assemble together in large numbers. But on the other hand, there are persons who would seek and would be offered shelter in hurricane shelters organized by governmental authorities. So that careful planning has to go into the location and arrangement of hurricane shelters. Because on the one hand, you have the pestilence that wants us to maintain social distance, but you have the hurricane that drives many persons whose homes are otherwise fragile and susceptible to damage into hurricane shelters. Now, these are days when governments do not have easy decisions to make. And unfortunately, in some countries, people are taking unfair advantage of the fact that the governments in those countries can only do so much. On the other hand, you have a place like the United States of America, where the government has encouraged persons to keep their social distances, yet the head of the very government in the United States of America is encouraging persons to liberate themselves by assembling. And you see, you get the clash between political ambition and concern for life and limb. On a previous program, I'll try to find it, but this occurred a couple of years ago, when I was calling for national unity at the political level, long before anything was heard of COVID. I said, you know, if our politicians don't learn to come together and cooperate, the Lord has a way of compelling persons to do the sensible things. And I just hope that throughout the Caribbean we will get an aura of responsibility from our political and civic authorities where cooperation is concerned. I will urge our people to regard what is happening now with seriousness. This is not the time to want to exert your own sense of your rights and nobody must tell you what to do and so forth. The time may come when we may experience severe shortages of one commodity or another, particularly those commodities essential to life. We trust our authorities to make the correct decisions, and I would urge all our citizens to pay heed to what the officials are telling us and don't feel that we know it all and we can do our own thing and nobody should tell us what to do. The more I listen to international news, the more dread I feel. When you hear that countries in Africa have just started getting the virus and things are already so bad in places which have undeveloped health systems and severe overcrowding already. Let me end by doing that which is being done in many countries in the world, by thanking those persons in the field of caring for our health, our doctors and nurses and other persons associated with providing medical care. Thank you for the work you have been doing. Thank God for you, and may you be safe. My brothers and sisters, these are trying times. By all means, let us repose faith in prayers, confidence in the good Lord, but let us be sensible and do that which is regarded as correct for our collective safety and well-being. That is all from this program of The Law and You. I'm sorry that I have to be so somber, but these are times when the world is facing challenges the likes of which it has never faced before. None of us alive has ever gone through what the world is now going through with the COVID pestilence. We have to learn new modalities, new ways of behaving. But above all, we have to be humble and thankful to the good Lord. So that is all from The Law and You for this program number 970. I look forward to being of further service to you next week, Monday DV, for another presentation in this public service nation building series, The Law and You. Do have a pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls. Do the right thing, obey the regulations, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You. A look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You. Presented by lawyer panel R. Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.